Thank you, Snake Man. I am absolutely honored to introduce a great leader this evening. Governor of Florida for 8 years, Governor Jeb Bush, did quite a bit in the state of Florida. He reduced taxes, reformed education, limited quite a bit of government waste, created jobs, and improved the economy of Florida. And I believe he can do that for the United States of America. So he is a proven leader. He loves this country. He's a principled conservative. He loves this country like he loves his wife and his kids and his grandkids. And that's really what this election is all about. It's about the future of this country, future generations. So let's give a Las Vegas welcome to the next President of the United States.
Great seeing you again. You got the coolest mustache of anybody. Please sit down. It's easy to be inspired by the Lord, but it's even easier to be inspired by a pastor who's got that kind of look. Thank you. Thanks for all the work you do. Mr. Speaker, thank you for being here. For all the elected officials serving this community in Carson City and here in Las Vegas, it is an honor and privilege for me to be here. For those that have come to hear me talk and to have a dialogue, I really appreciate it. I'm excited about being a candidate for President of the United States because I believe we're on the verge of the greatest time to be alive in this world. I believe if we fix a few really big, complex things, this country will rise up. And if we don't find common ground, the net result will be that we're going to be in decline. This is a huge time in American history. Everybody always says that this election coming up is always the most important one. This one, I think, is. And so I wake up thinking, first and foremost, what an incredible honor to be a candidate. There's 16 others running on the Republican side, so other people must think the same thing. But I wake up with joy in my heart to be able to express my love of country and my belief that I have the leadership skills, working with a lot of people that may not agree with me on everything, but forging consensus to fix some big things so that we can rise up again. Here are the facts. And this is why a lot of people aren't as optimistic as I am, I think. Here are the facts. 6 million more people are in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama got elected president. 6 million people. A lot of people that are stuck. They don't want to be stuck in poverty. They want to rise up like everybody else does. The great middle of our country has a declining median income. First time ever in American history, in a recovery, we've seen declining income rather than rising income. 6.5 million people are working part-time, the majority of which would rather be working full-time. But we've created so much complexity on top of our economy that they're stuck in part-time jobs. For the first time in recorded history, more businesses are being closed than being formed. So if you have a dream, if you have an idea that you want to start a business, today in many parts of our country it's so complex you give up. Say it's not worth it. In California, where I was yesterday, there's an $800 occupational license tax. Hopefully you don't have one of those here. So every year you pay $800. It's not to benefit you. It's basically a tax on your dreams. And fewer people are dreaming those kind of dreams. And so we're not seeing the kind of vital, dynamic America that has always been able to solve problems. These are challenging times for a whole lot of people. And I understand why people are angry and why they're anxious about what the future looks like. But here's the deal. It's time for us to fix these things now. I'm not running to prey on people's fears and their legitimate angst about the future. I'm running to say, why don't we come together to fix these things? And as President of the United States, that would be my mission. Changing the most convoluted tax code in the world. In fact, we have this bizarre situation today where businesses, smaller businesses overseas, are buying bigger U.S. businesses, relocating them overseas where the higher wage jobs are created because of our tax code, the highest tax rates in the world. We tax worldwide taxation. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but the simple fact is no one else does that. And we're creating this dislocation where where businesses aren't being formed in our own country. We should lower taxes and eliminate as many deductions as possible. You shouldn't have to fly to Washington, D.C. to get your little tax cut deal done. You shouldn't have to hire a lobbyist to be able to protect your business. You shouldn't have to go to Washington and see the most prosperous city in the world because of the complexity of how we regulate and how we tax. If I'm elected president, we will reform our tax code by lowering rates for personal income and for corporate income and eliminate all of these deductions, as many as possible, so that people can decide what kind of dreams they want to pursue. They need to be the ones to do it, not government. The same applies with rules. Look, every idea from the top down, it's always well-intentioned. I, for one, don't assume that people that believe that we should regulate everything from Washington, D.C. are poorly intended, but the net result is it doesn't work. Every time we take power away from our communities and our state, we get a bad outcome. And so whether it's the EPA now creating these massively complex rules on top of power generation, expanding the way beyond what the executive authority exists as it relates to this very basic issue that's going to raise utility prices for everybody in this country and is going to make it harder for businesses to be competitive, or whether it's the FCC that now has decided that access to the internet needs to be regulated with a 1934 law. A little bit different. Al Gore hadn't invented the internet, in 1934. We had one wireline carrier. The 1934 law may have made sense when there was AT&T. It doesn't make any sense to regulate the internet and the access to the internet and imply that there's the possibility of regulating the content to create productivity and the possibilities of expanding our economy that a decade ago we couldn't even imagine. Every time we have a well-intended idea like that from the top down, it stifles innovation. It stifles the next generation of dreamers. It stifles the jobs that will be high-wage jobs. And it makes us more dependent upon government. So just like with taxes, we need to challenge every aspect of how rules are done. There should be an economic impact for every rule done. Anything that costs over $100 million ought to go back to Congress to get approval, by the way. We shouldn't allow a runaway executive authority to make it harder and harder for all of us to rise up. We should embrace the energy revolution in our midst. Here's the deal. There's a success story that we don't celebrate that much anymore, and it's kind of interesting. This country still leads the world in so many ways. I'll tell you a story. It's a uniquely American story. There have been two technologies in the drilling business that have existed for 25 years or more. Horizontal drilling, the ability to drill and drill sideways, and hydraulic fracking, the ability to go through geological structures in a way that made sense. It was fairly Byzantine, and a Greek immigrant, only in America, a private company, only in America, with private property rights in the subsurface, only in America, through trial and error, most of the time in America, created a revolution. In the late 1990s, people were building liquefied natural gas facilities, these massively expensive facilities to import LNG from the Middle East because we had 10 years of supply left. Now we have over 100 years of supply. We should be exporting LNG. We should make it easier for that to take place. The best deal that American consumers have gotten are the lower utility prices because natural gas prices here are the lowest in the world. Why did it happen? It happened because we didn't have a command and control top-down driven system. We had a system that was open and transparent, where a guy took risks, and he actually found a better way of doing things, and he disrupted the technology, and they continue to improve. America does that spectacularly well. Every time we create rules on top of that to try to limit its ability, we're stifling the next job to be created. I want to be the president. Look, when I was governor, I focused on environmental policy. And it was a balanced approach. We focused on creating the field of dreams for high economic growth. Our economy grew at 4.4% every year. We could grow at 4% again, or 4% in our country again if we were serious about it. But we also used the revenues that came from that to take care of the most vulnerable in our society. We rebuilt our child welfare system. We dealt with waiting lists for the developmentally disabled. I was totally committed to the most vulnerable in our society because we were growing our economy and generating revenue without raising taxes. In fact, we cut taxes. And we also protected the natural environment. This is not a zero-sum game. We can fix these things and grow economically where people have more money in their pocket, and the people that are stuck in poverty can be lifted up, where they can achieve earned success. I know we can do this. I know we can do it, but it's going to require leadership. And while some people here have proven leadership working in local government, I had the chance to be a leader in Florida. Florida's not a California blue state. It's not a Texas red state. It's kind of right down the middle. It's purple as all get out. It's kind of like Nevada in many ways. We have more Democrats, 500,000 more Democrats that are registered. But I ran on a conservative reform agenda, and I got to do what I said I was going to do. I cut taxes $19 billion each and every year, never raised taxes. We reformed our career civil service system where people that were not doing their jobs could be fired. I know that sounds like a radical idea, that lifetime employment in the government sector could be challenged. We challenged it, and we paid people that did a better job more. We moved to a system where we weren't punitive or, it wasn't political. We were just trying to make government work on behalf of people, because right now, you look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., the Veterans Department, the Office of Policy, the Personnel Management, the INS or the ICE Department. If you've ever had to deal with government today, it is way too big. It doesn't work. We should reform, just as we did in Florida, the federal employment system so that they serve us rather than us serving them. And I did that. We cut the state government workforce by 11% during my 8 years. I tried to do more because I do think that government is too big. Even in a small government state, you can live within your means. We went from $1 billion of reserves to $9 billion of reserves when I left. Most politicians try to spend it down. We were saving it for a rainy day, which is, I think, what we need to do in Washington, D.C. We're now indebting our children and grandchildren so that we never reform the things that take place now. We need a president that is willing to reform the things now so that we have reserves for our children and grandchildren. And as a leader, I took on the establishment in education. Florida was 50th out of 50 states in education, 50 out in graduation rate. I mean, we couldn't even whisper, thank God for your favorite other state. We couldn't do it. We took on the teachers union. Not the teachers, but the union, and we won. We reformed the system. We created the most ambitious school choice programs, and we built the first statewide voucher program, the second statewide voucher program, and the third statewide voucher program. By the way, I applaud the legislature and your governor for passing an ESA law that allows for parents, particularly low-income parents. I'll tell you what happens, because we did this in Florida. What happens when you empower parents with choices that they don't have because they don't have the dough to be able to go to a private school? Public schools get better. All schools get better. When you empower parents to make decisions and engage with them and give them a chance to be able to make that decision, everybody has to be moving towards them. And the net result is in Florida, when we changed this system, we created school choice, we eliminated this insidious program called social promotion. This is what we have in America today. If you're functionally illiterate as a child, you're passed on. It doesn't matter. It's someone else's fault. It's your family, it's the income, it's the color of your skin, the soft bigotry of low expectations exists in America today, and it's shameful. We should say that every child, by the time they end third grade, are below basic. They're above functionally illiterate, because in fourth grade, it's when children begin to acquire knowledge. Up till then, they're learning how to read. In fourth grade, they're reading to learn. And if you can't read, you're not going to be able to do math and science. Well, in Florida, we took on this orthodoxy. A third of our kids were functionally illiterate. And I'm proud to tell you that has been cut more than a half. And the net result of accountability, of school choice, of focusing on school-based management rather than the bureaucracy, was that Florida has now increased the graduation rate each and every year by 50% overall. Florida's African-American kids compared to their counterparts on the 4th grade report card are number 1. Hispanic kids are 2 grade levels. Hispanic kids are 2 grade levels ahead of their counterparts. Florida's low-income Hispanic kids on this 4th grade test do better than the California average. Kids with learning disabilities are number 1 in the United States. So don't let anybody tell you that if you challenge the system and you focus on making sure that the God-given abilities of every child to learn, if you challenge it and you implement it and you stick with it, that every child can learn, don't let people excuse away why they don't. Because in this country, we're never going to have a right-to-rise society unless every child has the God-given ability, maximize where they can learn so that they can pursue their dreams as they see fit. Look, leadership matters. This was not done easy. This was tough. I got tire marks on my forehead fighting for this. And by the way, I was fighting on behalf of families that didn't vote for me. So what? That's not the job. It's not to pay back people that vote for you. When you get elected to a position as governor or president of the United States, you're representing everybody. They don't have to agree with you all the time. You have to have a heart for them, and you have to be on their side. And eventually, you might win them over, but it doesn't matter. This is about service. Principle-centered leadership, applying conservative principles the right way, will reform the things that are broken in this country so that more people have a chance to rise up. That's what I believe in my heart, and that is the passion I have for running for president. And I believe we can grow our way out of many of these problems that we face. The other thing that's so important, that is really creating real dangers today, is the lack of leadership in the world. America is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary country for all sorts of reasons. But one of the reasons is when we lead in the world, we create peace and security. And when we pull back, bad things happen. It's happened in history, and it's happening right now. Today, in Syria and Iraq, there is a caliphate. I never in my mind 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, or frankly 2 years ago, would have thought that a caliphate controlled by barbarian Islamic terrorists would exist. But it does. And it does, and it persecutes Christians. It will kill Christians. They will destroy Muslims that don't adhere to this radical orthodoxy that requires them to follow a script that is not in the teachings of Islam. They're barbarians. They've announced that their objective is to send the black flag of ISIS in the White House. Of course, they've got a fairly bold agenda here, but the simple fact is, as it stands, they're winning, and we're not pushing them back. And they get recruits each and every day. Their energy comes from the fact that they exist, and we're allowing it to happen. And we allowed ISIS to be created when we pulled back way too fast as it relates to Iraq. There was a forces agreement ready to be signed, and the President and the Secretary of State said otherwise. They said, no, we're not going to do it. I think President Obama wanted to fulfill a campaign promise. Fine, campaign promises should be fulfilled. But when you're the commander-in-chief and leader of the free world and you pull back like this, voids are filled. And that's what happened. And the net result now is, instead of having a fragile but stable Iraq, we now have an Iraq on fire. And its neighbor, Syria, the exact same thing. You remember the red line? Do you remember when the president committed to supporting the Syria Free Army and then started calling them pharmacists and doctors and dentists or something like that? By our pulling back and not being true to our word, the voids were created in Syria as well, and now we have mass upheaval. Out of 23 million people that live of the Syrian population, 11 million have been uprooted. Now, this is not all the responsibility of the United States, but when we pull back, when we're part of the community of nations rather than being a leader of nations, we see the result. When I'm commander-in-chief, if I'm privileged to win this election and serve, we will restore American leadership in the world. Our friends will know that we have their back, and our enemies will fear us a little bit. This president has this tendency that is deeply disturbing to me that says if you don't agree with him, whatever it is, that somehow you're a warmonger in foreign policy. Or if you don't agree with the Iranian deal, which, by the way, will make the efforts to take out ISIS far more difficult because of Iran's sponsorship of terrorism, Shia terrorism in the world. If you don't agree with that deal, The net result is that you're part of the Death to America crowd. You're in cahoots with the Death to America crowd. Well, my friends, he's negotiating with the Death to America crowd. He's doing that. The Death to Israel crowd, the Death to America crowd. He's giving up the ability, the leverage we have to make sure that they don't secure a nuclear weapon. He's not negotiating in anything related to their ability to have missile defense capabilities, which they're buying from the Russians, ballistic missile capability, which they'll continue to develop, conventional weapons capability, which they'll now have with the release of the sanctions, the oppression of their own people, and 3 American hostages, innocent Americans that are held hostage in Iran for no reason. This is the wrong deal, and I hope Congress rejects it, and if I'm elected President of the United States, I will make sure that Iran never gets the nuclear capability. I don't think that sounds bellicose. I believe that is the traditional bipartisan foreign policy that has led the world. That's what we need to restore. Everything shouldn't have a D or an R by its name. It wasn't that long ago that peace through strength was a value that almost all Americans believed in. If we're a confident country, if we grow again, if people believe their future is going to be bright, if they believe their children will have more opportunities than what they have, then they will commit to American leadership in the world, because that's how we create peace and security for our own homeland. And I'm committed to that. The final thing I'll say, and then we'll open it up for questions, is that I'm going to run a different kind of campaign. I hope you've seen it as it starts. I have joy in my heart. I'm not a grievance candidate. I'm not angry. I'm not going to fake anger. I love this country. I believe we're on the verge of greatness. I'm frustrated, like you are, that the system isn't working, that our government's not working on our behalf. But there's no reason to be paralyzed by anger. There is no reason, because if we fix these things, we'll lead the world for a long, long while. So I'm going to campaign with joy in my heart. I'm going to campaign in a way that hopefully will draw people towards our cause. I'm going to campaign to win. I'm going to campaign in every place I can to spread this message that's more hopeful and optimistic. I'm not going to try to demonize what people think that if they don't agree with me. I'm going to run a campaign that draws us together and unites us. I'm going to campaign like this rather than like this. And I believe that if you support a campaign like this, you're looking at the next President of the United States. Thank you all very much. We have microphones? Okay. Yes, sir.
Sir, just either, I think yesterday or today, the Inspector General of the State Department came out and said there were at least 2 top secret emails on Hillary Clinton's server that were top secret at the time they were sent. I'm not an attorney, but I believe that's a crime. What are you, or what is the Congress, or what is anybody going to do about this?
So the FBI has taken her server and files that were on that server, and they're going to determine whether it's true that the classified information was sent through that server, which she said didn't happen.
But the Inspector General of the State Department said it did.
No, I got that. That's why the FBI has it. That's the entity that is the law enforcement entity that is going to investigate that. And I hope, look, Secretary Clinton should just be transparent about this. If she did nothing wrong, just give out the information, for crying out loud. Don't do the drip, drip, drip thing. This is, look, all I can tell you is how I've done. I've released 33 years of tax returns. Not the most fun thing in the world to do. As governor, I had emails. You can go online at, I think, jebemail.com or something like that. You can go check my emails. It's a matter of public record. I'm writing a book, an e-book about my emails, because I used emails to serve people. And I think just being clear and transparent. The Justice Department now has this information. They'll make the determination. But she should just come clean. And there's another element. Put aside I'm not a lawyer either, so I don't know what the criminal justice elements of this are. This was against the Obama administration's procedures as well. I mean, there's an issue there as well. Yes, ma'am. That was safer. I can hear it.
All of these friends that came with me, can you guys raise your hand? And we just want you, because I like you. I think if I were Republican, I will vote for you.
Oh!
But let me tell you, I want you to support immigrants with the immigration reform.
I'll tell you what I'm for.
And citizenship.
I'll tell you what I'm for.
The whole package. Thank you so much, Chef.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you didn't lose your money gambling.